Greetings Grapple fans, and welcome to British Wrestling Legends and the Wrestlers Reunion Association's first ever short interview. We're here today in sunny Los Cristianos, and we're going to visit none other than the Mean Machine, the Master of Disaster, public enemy number one, Mark Rollerball Rocco. We're going to ask him how he got in the wrestling business, what he did in the wrestling business, and what he's up to today. And we're also going to present him with this for his achievements to British wrestling. So, Daniel, are we looking forward to it?
Yes.
Have a good week till next week. Well, we've managed to locate Rollerball Rocco. We've come to his house. We know he's in because we spoke to his wife at the office. He's definitely in. We're going to go in. Hopefully he'll be there. We'll be on the toilet or something. Don't laugh. So we're going to go and see the main man, see what he's got to say. This is from all the fans of British wrestling, past and present. We really appreciate what he's done. At the wrestling reunion, he got one from his peers, but this is specifically from the wrestling fans. We want to wish him all the best and see how he's doing. This has got to be it. Number 45, Dan. Number 45. Is that the bar?
Yeah, I think.
Does that make a sound? Press it again. Hello? Oh, hello. I know you're busy. I hope you don't mind me. I've spoke to your wife. She said you was in. I spoke to you very briefly at the wrestlers reunion. There was something here for you.
Oh, wonderful.
It's the second part of your award. It's from the fans of British wrestling, and just to say, for all the action, the entertainment, and ultimately the sacrifices you made at wrestling, I'd like to say congratulations and thanks for everything.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. And these are my fans watching now.
Fantastic. Yes.
You found me in the Rocco's Lair. Come on, come inside.
Is it through here? Go on then, Dan. Through here, right.
You found me. I'm in the hills and you found me.
Wipe your face.
Okay.
Right, excellent. The date is Saturday the 2nd of September 2006, and today we are joined by a true legend of British wrestling, none other than Mark Rollerball Rocco. We'd like to welcome you today and thank you for giving your time away from your busy schedule. My first question to you is, how did you get into the wrestling business?
Hi Paul, nice to meet you. Okay, great. Long story. Family history. My father was a wrestler for many years. My father started wrestling in 1940 or 1941. So our wrestling history goes back, and before that, my dad's father was an Irish boxer, and my father's grandfather, which is my great-grandfather, was an amateur wrestler in Ireland. So we've got a long history. Now my son's a boxer, so I'm the fourth, and my son's the fifth generation of pugilists. So it's in the family, you know. It's my other son, Richard. He boxes but for no money. He likes to have a good fight, but he has had seven amateur fights, and he's good, but he's not dedicated to it. So yeah, it goes back to my dad's time. The reason how I became a wrestler was is another long story. My father was wrestling. He was quite a busy wrestler. And the family, as a family, were involved in horses. And we had a farm, we had horses on the farm, and me and my sister rode horses. We spent a lot of time riding horses. And we used to go to all the shows, all the weekend shows and the county shows. And my father's idea was for me not to be in the wrestling business. But as a kid growing up, 12, 13 years old, my dad had a gym in the farm. With a ring, with weights, with all the paraphernalia that you needed to have a wrestling gym, and all the young Manchester wrestlers went there and trained at night and at weekends. So when my dad wasn't there, I used to sneak in, and and practice and learn wrestling without his knowledge. So he wasn't aware of me wrestling for 2 or 3 years from going in the gym. So then he he went to wrestle at a place just outside Birmingham called Yardley. And on the night they had a licensed victualers wrestling show where all the people sat around in bow ties and dress suits. All the people were local people that were there. The wrestlers were coming from all over the place, and it was a very foggy night. And when I got there was nobody. There was about 3 of the wrestlers there, my dad and different people. In the gym, I'd been training with Colin Johnson. Colin Johnson is a really good friend of mine, and he was really instrumental in teaching me wrestling rather than my father. My father was the catalyst that really gave me an idea to do it. But Colin was the guy who put it into practice and started to show me and had a bit of confidence in me. And Colin was there on the night at Yardley when everyone was held up with the fog. So the promoter, I think the promoter was Bess Ryan's, and the promoter, Bess Ryan's brother, was panicking badly. We're going to have to cancel the show, we can't put the show on. So Colin said, well, we've got 4 or 5 guys here, Mark could wrestle. So my father looked at me and, what are you talking about, you're going to wrestle? So I said, well, I don't know. And they told him that I'd been practicing in the gym, I'd been training in the gym. And that was it. So right, okay. So they found me a pair of boots, found me a pair of trunks that were 3 sizes too big, so I had one hand on my trunks. So in I went. And I went in with Colin, because Colin had been teaching me in the gym, and they announced it, we were going to have a little exhibition match because the lads hadn't turned up. So they announced it as being an exhibition match, and I got in with Colin, and it was the first time I'd been in the ring. And I'd been training really hard, I'd been skipping, I'd been running, I was fit. And we get into the ring. At the end of the first round, I thought my lungs were going to explode. I was so nervous, and so the energy that was used by me in doing this was immense, incredible. So it must have been a sad debut, really, because I wasn't ready and I had the wrong kit on and I wasn't up for it. And Colin helped me through it. It was an exhibition match. Colin helped me through it. But I've got to say, at the end of the first round, I thought, this is not what I want to do. This is not where I want to be. It wasn't very, very difficult and hard. I wasn't prepared. And it was a really difficult intro into the wrestling business.
When was your second match after that?
That was in about the November of the year I started, which was in 1970. 1969 that would be, in November. And the first booking then that I'd got was Eldorado Stadium in Glasgow. And between November, I'd been wrestling before that, 2 years, 3 years before that. But between November and February, when the match in Eldorado Stadium was, which was Max Crabtree, who was under the banner of Ron Wisco Green, and he was promoting shows, little shows, and he had his main venue really was the Eldorado Stadium in Edinburgh, which is a blood pit. It was really was a very hardcore wrestling venue. The ring was in the middle. All the seats were onto concrete bleachers, and they went at both sides, and you had to walk down into the ring, and you had to walk back out the ring. So this is the first time I'd been booked to wrestle. In that period that we're talking about, intensive training, my father said, "You want to wrestle? Okay, you wrestle properly." And he sent me all over the place to learn. And my learning curve carried on after my debut, because I went to Spain, I went to Greece, I went to Turkey, learning all the different styles, I wrestled here in the Canaries, Lucha Libre, here on the beach here. I came over on holiday to look at the Lucha Libre style. And I'm still very affectionate for that now. I still go and see it in different... They have fantastic wrestling schools here, and it's a pure sport, and they have... all the big towns have a Lucha Libre stadium, and once a week the local team of wrestlers wrestle another local team of wrestlers, another city team of wrestlers. So it's very popular here, wrestling. And I learned all those skills. Anyway, back to this. So this is the February now. I'm in Eldorado Stadium. And I'm on with a guy who Max Crabtree had brought in, who was a bad guy from France, I think, and he was the Black Mask, And they put me in with him. I was a young 17-year-old kid, just starting, very novice, and they put me in with the Black Mask, who the crowd immediately took a dislike to, even though they'd never seen him. He walked to the ring and it brought the place down with boos. They send me in, I get in the ring, I'm on with this guy. By the end of the match, the crowd were attacking him because he'd taken liberties with me as a young boy. The crowd were attacking him. He ran up the steps, he went to go through the exit doors, which he'd already looked at his way out. It was locked, the door was locked. He ran back down the steps and he ended up under the ring. And the crowd were trying to get him. And the crowd were all round the ring, looking under the ring. And he must have had a hammer or something because he was banging the bottom of the ring and like, get away, and everyone was standing back. This guy couldn't speak a word of English. And they started pulling the mat back on the top, and the canvas, and the felt, and they started getting the boards up. And I'm at the back, you know, with the towel around me thinking, look at this poor guy, and he's under the ring and they're going to kill him. And they've now got the boards and they're pushing the boards to the holes in the ring, trying to stab him, you know, trying with the board, you know. So I watched this for a little while and I said to Max Crabtree, who stood at the back, and Max Crabtree had a handkerchief and he used to stand at the back and he was laughing at the handkerchief, with a very vicious type of a laugh, you know. And this poor guy's on the verge of getting killed, you know. And I said, Max, we're going to have to go and help him. Look at this. Let's get the boys out of the dressing room. Let's go down there and get this guy out. They're going to kill him. And Max Crabtree looked at me and he said, kid, you've got to feed them sometimes. And I'll never forget that statement. And I always remembered that. And when I had people against me and I was walking out the ring, I always used to think of Max Crabtree and how it would have been wonderful for his business if that guy would have been killed on that night by those fans, and it would have made the front page in the papers. And that's how vicious our business can be. It's about that, because he'd employed this guy to come over and wrestle. If he never saw him again, it didn't matter. And when they were trying to kill him, I was really concerned, and he didn't care. He just wanted the publicity, and he wanted that to happen. It would be good for next time, you know. It's a very cynical business.
At what point in your career were you exposed to the entertainment and the psychology side of wrestling?
As a kid, I used to go with my dad a lot of places. You know, I used to travel with him. In summer holidays, I used to fly to France with him and different things. And wrestling never really lit the flame. And a lot of people are going to not believe what I'm going to tell you now, but this is true. I'd been with my dad to France a couple of times. I'd been in Belgium with him. I'd been all over the country with him. I'd seen lots of wrestling shows. And in those days, I'm talking about in the 60s, you know, wrestling was popular, but in a different way. There was no, the showmanship thing at that time wasn't at its peak. It was a little bit later than that when it started to really come to the front. Everyone wore black trunks and black boots, and if you wore a different pair of coloured trunks, it was amazing. And I went with my dad to Bellevue Stadium, and Bellevue Stadium was built for wrestling. It was specifically built for wrestling. Bellevue Manchester was a big fun fair. It had the speedway, it had a fairground, it had lots of different things. And they built the King's Hall specially for wrestling. And it was in the days of Jack Pye. And Jack Pye was the big star there for many years. And they used to call it Jack Pye's Arena. And it was built specifically for boxing and wrestling. And I went there with my dad, and I was quite familiar with there because I used to like going on a Saturday night to Bellevue because I could go and watch the speedway. I could come back in, I had a pass, you know, come back in the back dressing room door, and I stood in the chute down to the ring, from the dressing rooms up towards the ring, and the people were hanging over the sides, and you used to walk through the curtains and up to the ring. And I stood there with some of the other people from backstage watching the matches, and Jackie Pallo came on. Now, until this point, I'd seen loads of other wrestlers. I'd seen all the best in the world, all the people that people rave about, you know, George Gordienko and all these big names, Bertaz Arati, all the people, the real tough people. But there was no showbiz there. They were just there. Their gimmick was being a real hard case and fit and tough. Like there is now in the WWF. There's lots of big guys. The gimmick is being a huge, tough, fit guy. So this had never really turned the flame, and I stood and I watched Jackie Pallo walk to the ring, and that made me look at wrestling in a different view. I looked at it in a different way, and I saw Jackie walking to the ring, and I saw the reaction he had on the crowd. I wasn't watching Jackie Pallo, I was watching the crowd, but I was 12, don't forget, this time. And this then said, this business is more than I'm looking at. This is more, this is deeper. The people are looking at it in a different way than I'm, you know. And that was the thing that really turned the switch. I saw Jackie Pollard was something. And it's never been a very, I never wanted to copy him. I never wanted to do what he did. I never wanted to impersonate him. What I mean is that it showed me that he had a psychological hold over the crowd that was nothing to do with wrestling. It was his image and his personality and his way of involving the crowd in his matches. And that was very clever. And that was early days, and everyone knocks Jackie Pallo for this time. He was a fantastic showman, and it was the first time. And there are lots of other people there, you know. I mean, there were lots of other people at that time. I mean, Les Kellett and that, fantastic showman. But he didn't have that little glamour that Jackie Pallo had when he walked to the ring, and it was something that really stuck in my mind all through my career. And I've always, not many people know that, but that's the God's honest truth.
Did you receive any heat from any of the older wrestlers because of your style, with it being so dangerous?
Yeah,
and so
absolutely. My initial role when I started to wrestle was to go on first and wrestle somebody and leave it for the big guys, my manners, and all those guys that were at the top of the bill. They didn't want me showing all my skills on first. And by the time I really started, by the time I got to 18, you know, I was quite skillful. I'd been everywhere, I'd wrestled everybody, I'd done everything. My dad was so insistent that if I did it, I had to do it properly. And he was so insistent on that. And it was a case of, if you want to be a wrestler, you've got to be good or you don't do it, because there's no money in it if you're no good. So I'd made sure that I'd honed my skills. I'd wrestled so many different styles, so many different places, so many different areas. I'd learned the business from the ground up, you know, and I've never stopped learning all through my career. You know, even when I went to Japan, I used to get on the mat with Brad Reagans, who was Olympic champion, and every day when I was in Japan with Brad Reagans, I wrestled on the mat with him, learning from him, you know, learning moves that Olympic style moves that could be used in the professional circle. So I never lost that learning, that hunger for learning. So I was learning. So I'd got lots of things that people hadn't seen in England. And if I went on first and did them, they sort of stole the show a little bit. So I got a lot of heat from the promoters especially that said, the top of the bill doesn't want you to appear on the bill if he's on it, because it kills his show. And I wasn't doing anything to do with them. I wasn't doing the same moves, and I wasn't trying to imitate them or do things that they were doing. What I was doing skillful stuff that they hadn't seen before, and it sort of took the limelight a little bit away from the main start. The old formula used to be, when I first started wrestling, the old formula was, put someone on first that bored them to death. Put a quite lively match on second that, when it finishes, they have the interval. Then the third match before the top of the bill used to be a very technical wrestling match. Always, very technical wrestling, with fantastic wrestlers who had great ability. But it was like watching a game of chess. I mean, the lads were putting on very serious arm holds and leg locks and wrist locks and all this. But it was to bring the crowd into a very responsive attitude. So the crowd would be watching every move very carefully and quietly. And then all of a sudden the top of the bill comes out, people that they don't like or people they recognise, that they boo and shout at, the hero that they clap and cheer. And that's when they lifted the crowd. Then they said, I'm happy, you know. Mm. But those early days, my place wasn't on first because I was probably better than the people on second. And if I was on third before the main event, it killed the main event. And I'm not being a big shot by saying that. That's the truth. Yeah. So I had that problem. After discussing it with my dad, he said, keep doing what you're doing. Eventually you'll break through. And that's what happened. That's true. And then years and years later, I wouldn't let that happen if I had anything to do with the show. I wouldn't let them put a match on to bring it down. I used to try and have the crowd on the feet or interested from start to finish with the show.
How long after your first match did you debut on TV, and how did the match go?
That's a long time ago. I think I'd been wrestling about 6 months. And I can't even remember who I was on with first of all. It may have been Peter Ginsberg from the Black Diamonds. It might, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that it's terrible to say, I can't remember. I've actually got a list of records in my office that would have told me, but I can't really remember. It wasn't an important match, and it didn't stick out in my mind. It was formation years, and those years I was learning. It wasn't really Rollerball Rocco. Those were the early years, which didn't really matter. That was learning the trade.
Did you feel any extra pressure with it being on TV?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you're in the ring and you are wrestling away, that doesn't come into it. It's the nervousness beforehand. But I've seen that nervousness in people over the years. I've seen real mainliners who are so nervous before they go in the ring on a big show, even on a small show, that you wouldn't believe it. If I wasn't nervous before a match, I didn't feel that I should be there. I had to be nervous before a match, and always was. And go to the toilet 50 times, feel sick. I mean, Bruiser Brody used to bark going to the ring. That started because he was throwing up, and as he was throwing up, with nerves, he used to make it into a bark. That's Bruiser Brody. He told me that all those years ago. No one I never knew that. Nobody knows that. Nobody's heard that. But he told me where he got the bark from. He used to go to the ring and go, woo, woo, and that was he was throwing up. That's how he camouflaged the barf, to make it look bark. But you've got to feel a certain amount of nervousness. If you don't feel nervous, then you shouldn't be doing the job. It's not nerves, it's apprehension. It's to give your best. It's making sure that you give your best when you're doing it. That's what it is.
Can you tell me what titles you've held in the UK?
You'll know better than me. I was British champion. I beat Burt Royal for the British Championship. I was about 25, I think, when I did that. Burt was fantastic. Burt was heavy middleweight champion for years. He was a fantastic technician. He was getting a bit long in the tooth. He was a brilliant wrestler, and I took the title from him and carried it for a long time. The title until you had to have the world, or when you get the world championship, the British Championship goes back to be contended for. But the big lift was the world title. I mean, Joël Defremery had got a fantastic record. He was unbeaten. He was an absolute legend in France. I'd been to France and I'd never wrestled him, but I'd wrestled on shows where he was there. He was always top of the bill. He always had an amazing crowd to see him. He was a very technical wrestler and amazing ability. He did moves that I saw. The first time I saw him, he had some wrestling moves there which were incredible that I hadn't even seen before. He was a good star. And I think after he lost the world title, he lost the will to carry on. He lost the feeling for the business. I don't think he wrestled very much after that.
I've got a guest question from Timothy Cross, who's a big fan of yours, and he knew I was coming to see you. And he wanted to know, when you got the belt, what was your feelings? Because you was now representing joint promotions.
Incredible. It was an incredible feeling. My father, I'm proud to say, was with me when I won that. And there's lots of pictures of my dad with me when I won the championship. And it was at Southport. It was a big event at Southport. We turned the people away that night. It was a TV show. We turned the people away. And I never saw the guy before I went in the ring with him. I never saw him. I'd seen him in France. But in the ring, he was always in a different dressing room. He was the star of the show. I was always there. And I went to, it was the Floral Hall in Southport. There's a big venue. There's lots of dressing rooms there. And I got there, I don't know, maybe 7 o'clock. The show started about 7:30. I was on to about 9 o'clock. I think about 7, and I warmed up, I was in the corridor. And he walked past me in the corridor, and he never even looked at me. He just walked past me and went and did what he did, and went back again the other way. And I was squatting and pressing up. And I was really psyched up, and I was really, really psyched up. And Brian Crabtree was the referee. and Brian, you know, his little way, Brian, how then boys, you know, and he was like sort of trying to be very influential and the boss referee, and I was stood in the corner, and he came up to me, and I remember him speaking to me. I didn't hear what he said, and I was focused. I didn't even hear him say anything, and I was really, really focused. And he said it 3 times, and in the end, he slapped my face like that, and he said to me, "Listen to me." I said, "What?" You know, sort of, but he'd spoken to me, and I wasn't listening to him. I was concentrating on what I was doing, you know, and that was Brian Crouch's part in that little play. But it was an amazing feeling. The feelings, that is incredible feeling. I mean, that was the first step of my international career, and that was the first step of the big money. That's when it started to happen, you know what I mean? And the wrestling business has been very profitable for me, and I've made lots of money at it. I've had some lucky shouts as well. I've had some lucky things happen, but a lot of it's being in the right place at the right time, but doing the right thing in front of the right people, and doing it constantly and consistently. That's what it's about. To be able to go and have a fantastic match, a fantastic show, every time you're booked, not now and again. Yeah.
And then, what countries have you wrestled in, and which were your favourites and least favourites?
Countries of wrestling, all of it. When I say Europe, I mean everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, you can imagine Germany, France, Ireland, Denmark, Belgium, Holland, all those places, all that. A lot of time in Germany. I spent a lot of time in Germany. I didn't like the tournaments in Germany, so I never really fitted into that. So I've done a few of those tournaments, maybe 4 or 5. But I didn't like that. I mean, the wrestlers love to go to Germany and stay in the same place for 30 days and have this long tournament. I didn't like that. Once I'd wrestled everyone there, I was ready to move on. You know, I was ready to move. I wasn't the Germans' favourite. They like big fat guys that bump into each other like some of the big German stars that they've had over here. Otto Vance, you know, Otto Vance is huge and, you know, and strong. He's amazingly strong, and the crowd love him. And it's a different. They're not really wrestling fans in Germany. They're well, that's the wrong thing to say. They're wrestling fans, but a different type of wrestling. You know, like sumo wrestling fans are different fans from professional wrestling.
What would be the worst country that would?
The worst country I've ever been to was Zimbabwe, which the fans were in wooden huts, the mud huts, and they would come into the venue. We had an outdoor show in a football stadium. There was 100,000 people in watching. About 2,000 people paid. The other 88,000 had climbed over the fence and knocked the doors down to get in. No, I'm telling you lies. No, that was a close second. The worst place ever was Sudan. We went to Sudan and we stayed in the Marriott Hotel in the middle of the capital there in Sudan. And the first night was fantastic. Then we went on the road into these little townships promoting wrestling. And they had some very enthusiastic promoters with loads of money, Arab money. They had loads of money there. And they were paying really well. They paid fantastic wages and they had a beautiful air-conditioned bus. But when we went to the little villages, the hotels didn't have glass in the windows. They had wire mesh on the windows. And these are guest hotels for the oil people, you know, the oil people there. And I couldn't believe it. I was there for 7 or 8 days. I got malaria from Sudan. And we went to one hotel, and it was there was a wall around an enclosure, and there was steel beds everywhere, and all the mattresses were rolled up on the beds. And in the corner was a hole in the ground, which was the toilet, and over there was a hose pipe, which is the shower. And the stadium was directly across the road from there, big football stadium, without floodlight, but just a big area all fenced in. And we just got on with it and did it, you know, and came back. But I never would go back. I ended up with malaria even though I'd taken all malaria medicine, I still ended up with malaria from there. But it was an unusual place to go. I'm glad I went. I'd never go again.
Is the 100,000 crowd, is that the largest crowd you've wrestled in?
No. Japan is on a different stratosphere than anywhere else for wrestling. And I've heard stories, I've not been to Japan for a while, But I hear stories now that the wrestlers go there for very little money. They go there just to say they've been to Japan, and the business now isn't like it was. But in the golden days, it was incredible there. I was in Tokyo Dome on the Saturday night before Mike Tyson got beat on the Tuesday for the world title. Tokyo Dome has 80,000 people indoors. Now, 80,000 people indoors, a lot more than 100,000 people outdoors. In the African countries, 100,000 people, you get that in those places. Indoor stadiums, the biggest venue I've ever been in was Tokyo Dome, 80,000. That was when New Japan and All Japan, all the title holders for New Japan, for all the title holders for All Japan, and ended up having an amalgamated title. And that was an incredible venue, I think it was one of the first times that the Tokyo Dome was used, and probably, I think definitely for the first time it was ever used for wrestling. And we had 80,000, it was packed, ringside tickets were $1,000. And Tyson was there a few days later, and I was stood at the back watching the Tyson fight when he fought Buster Douglas. And they couldn't sell the tickets because the Japanese people knew that Tyson would win. They were convinced that Tyson would win. And they knew he'd win quickly because they'd never heard of Douglas. They looked at him as a big lump, and then, and they didn't pay the tickets. And they had to, the TV company who promoted the show had to give hundreds of tickets away, or thousands of tickets away, to make the hall look decent when that was on. And that's a true story.
Can you tell me a little bit about the debut in Japan and how it came about?
Yeah, I was, I'd actually, George Elwisco had a contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling to send wrestlers to Japan. So my father went to Japan before me, and a lot of the older English, wrestlers, the 60s and 70s wrestlers went. People like John Lees and people like Tony Charles. The good working wrestlers went over to Japan in a period. I then get approached by Rollerball. It wasn't Rollerball. Rollerball talked to me about going to Japan, and I met a guy called Tokyo Joe. Tokyo Joe was a wrestler who lost his legs in a car crash. His car broke down. He went to the boot to get the spare wheel out, and he stood at the back of the car, and a car ran into the back of the car, and both his legs, the bumpers hit like that, and both his legs were amputated, and he had 2 false legs. And he was booking for a Japanese wrestling company before New Japan. And I went over there, and I met some incredible characters there. Mad Dog Vachon, and I met some incredible. I met the two of the biggest twins I've ever seen in my life. Not the Maguire twins. These were 2 Canadian twins. I can't remember the names, but identical twins, huge, massive, huge people. And I met a lot of people, a lot of decent people, decent wrestlers there, all from America, all good lads. And I did 2 tours for that group, and I wrestled there. They had a very good heavy middleweight, light heavyweight wrestler that then changed to All Japan Wrestling. He was then a big star in All Japan Wrestling. I can't even remember his name. But I went over there for him, to wrestle him, on a couple of occasions. So I had already been to Japan a couple of times. Then I got approached by Carl Gotch. Carl Gotch was the guy who was booking the boys in for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I went first of all for him as Rocco. While I was there, I saw some of the younger boys, that were learning to wrestle there. But the big break came for me was when a young guy had seen me on TV from Japan, and he was the original Tiger Mask. Sayama, his name was. Satoru Sayama, you'll know. Yeah. Second name was Sayama.
Yeah.
So he'd seen me, and he'd asked Carl Gotch about asking me to come and wrestle in Japan. So Carl Gotch said to me, look, they need somebody to wrestle. They've got a new star, which is Tiger Mask. He said, we need someone to go over there, and they've got an idea. So we explored this idea, we looked at it, and the idea was that they wanted a black and white hero and villain thing, and they wanted a black tiger, and I was the choice. I mean, this was a big this is a big shot. Don't forget, this was a future, you know, and they spoke to me. I spoke to two of the people from New Japan. That's what they call that sort of length. I spoke to a couple of other people in the UK that actually came over to speak to me about it. And they had this idea for the black tiger and the good tiger, you know, the two black tigers. So we looked at different ideas. They gave me some sketches of an outfit they'd like me to wear. I ended up with my own ideas with that. But I agreed to do it, to go as the black tiger. And the minute I agreed, from then on it was a roller coaster. They then had a TV program, a cartoon program of the tigers. They had the black tiger and the white tiger, and they had a storyline going through with this before I ever arrived in Japan. When I arrived in Japan, I'm on the plane, and the security people came on the plane and they said, you've got to put your black mask on to walk down the steps and through customs. Now, can you imagine in England putting a mask on and walking through customs control with no bags? They got the bag, they didn't even sit there. They went through customs control with a black mask on, and all the police were there and everything, and it had all been cleared. That's how well thought of the wrestling was in Japan at the time, and that's how the people who had the influence there could do that, you know. And the car came right to the side of the plane. They took me to instead of getting on the bus and with everyone going through customs control and through baggage collection, I went in a car to customs control, where they came to the car, checked the passport, and off I went. You know, I couldn't believe it. It was like John Lennon arriving. It was amazing. And when I got to the hotel, there was 50 reporters there, because they'd already done this fantastic promo on this idea, you know. And that first fight that when I wrestled Siam, I wrestled him in the Tokyo Dome, which is a big sumo. In the Sumo Palace, the big sumo arena there in Tokyo, and they paid me 10,000 English pounds. They flew me first class to Tokyo. They put me in the Kyo Plaza Hotel. They gave me expenses and presents and everything I could think of. And it's packed, the place is packed. And we had a world famous match. It was a legend match. You know, it was a really terrific match. And it was, years later I was told by one of the reporters, who I got quite friendly with, the Japanese reporters, the biggest TV audience that had ever had in Japan up until that date was me and Black Tiger. When it was really promoted well on the television, and it was Saturday night live show, and it was the biggest audience that they've ever had on the TV in Japan. And I was on with him, and he grabbed me, and I suplexed him over the top rope. She'd never seen in Japan, and the two of us went into the crowd, and we couldn't get back in the ring, for the crowd were trying to help the Tiger Mask back in the ring. There was that many crowd trying to help him that we got counted out for 10. And the two of us were out the ring for the 10 count, and that was it. Then that was aired, and that was it. It was, that match was on fire, and I went 38 times to Japan with a Black Tiger. That's more than anyone in Europe has ever been to Japan, and America, I don't think. Nobody's ever been that many times.
And did you, after that, return as Rollerball Rocco?
I never went back to Japan as Rollerball Rocco, but the fans, as they do, got to know. I had Japanese reporters coming from Japan to England to interview me, knowing that I was Black Tiger. Amazing. They used to come down a lot. I'm not now and again. I'm talking about all the time. We were there, and they used to report on my matches in England, back in Japan. You know, Black Tiger as Rollerball Rocco wrestled against such and such by England, and this is the results of it. And it's, you know, amazing. But I never wrestled as Black Tiger in England. After Black Tiger aired in Japan, I never wrestled as Rocco in Japan.
You mentioned about the money you was paid in Japan. Was it hard coming back to the UK for presumably considerably less money?
UK, yeah, it wasn't less money, but UK, I'll tell you a little story now, and I had an incident recently. I was asked to do an interview, and I said, yeah, I'll do it, no problem. And I charged a high fee to do it. And they said, oh, we don't normally pay that. We pay such and such a body, who is a wrestler, who is still active, I think, now, so much. And I said, well, who is this guy? Interview him for that, will you do it? Why do you want me? Because we want you, because, anyway, long story, I got the money. And when I saw it with the Wrestlers Union, I said, don't ever do things for nothing. You know, this is a very difficult business that we're in. It's hard to be at the top. We deserve what we get. Every penny I've earned in wrestling, I've earned. It was a long, hard road that I travelled, and all the money that I've got now came from the wrestling business. And every penny I earned was the starting money that's created more wealth. But it all came from wrestling, every bit of it. And people that sell out and do it for nothing because they like it, because it's a hobby, because it's a sport, that's not how it should be. If you had somebody who was a fantastic footballer, and Manchester United got him and he said, I'll play football for 50 quid a week, it wouldn't go down very well with all the other agents or the other footballers, you know. And unfortunately, wrestling has not had the right management and the right people as agents who've been able to get in between the promoters and the wrestlers so that they could, sorry, here's Black Tiger, look.
Making a camera appearance.
Here's a little Black Tiger, come on. But there's nobody that's ever been in the wrestling business that's got in the middle between the promoters, the agents, and the wrestlers. I mean, America, different story, you know. Hulk Hogan's agent asked for £10 million for him to do a movie for Disney. He got it. He got it with some things that maybe he didn't want to do, but he has to make 2 or 3 films he may have not wanted to make, but they did the deal. And in England, the promoters just had the run of the show for all these years, and there was lots of money in the wrestling business. When you say it's a drop from Japan, yeah, of course, sure it was. But I can't ever complain because I really got unbelievable money. When I was a friend with George Best was, I'm talking about when I was about 19, and I was wrestling every night, and I was on the television, and I was around different places. And I used to see George all the time. And George's wages at United were £100 a week, I think. And then he had all the other spin-offs, you know, he had the fashion shop, he had the hairdressers and all the rest of it. But his wages were £100 a week, George Best. And I was making a lot more than that wrestling as a kid in those early days. Making a lot more. So when I went out with George Best, I had a pocket full of cash, and he was getting paid by cheque that went into his bank. He never saw the money. It was always, you know, everyone bought him drinks, obviously, but George never had a pocket full of money because he was paid on a fixed fee. So when people say wrestling wasn't good, the first time I ever got paid, the first night I ever wrestled was at that Yardley or whatever. I think they gave me 12 quid, and 12 quid was a week's wages for somebody working in a factory at that time. So, you know, and I used to wrestle 4 to 5 times a week early days, you know.
Did you wrestle at Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, I did. I've wrestled a few times at Madison Square Garden. Vince McMahon Sr., look at the cat there, Jim's looking around. Vince McMahon Sr. Was an old-style promoter. He was a promoter like George Roscoe. He had his favourites. And Saturday night in Madison Square Garden used to be Ivan Puchki, who's a Polish guy, and Bruno Sammartino was Italian. So all the Poles in New York and all the Italians in New York used to come and see the 2 favourites in Madison Square Gardens. And it was full, it was packed with Polish and with Italians. It didn't matter who they fought, because they still come to support their heroes. Those are the old days, that's how it used to be in America. Vince McMahon Jr. had a different idea. He was the announcer on the TV shows, and he had the flair, and he had fantastic vision for the business. And he saw it as a new creative thing. So yeah, I did wrestle in Madison Square Gardens for Vince McMahon Senior when I was about 18, 19. And I wrestled for and got paid by New Japan Pro Wrestling to go as one of their representatives and wrestle a guy called the Cobra, who was Japanese. And they wanted a big event in Madison Square Gardens, and they promoted it there. We got incredible. The crowd, Madison Square Gardens. This is before the real razzmatazz from American wrestling, and I went in there and did all the Black Tiger stuff, and the people couldn't believe it. And I never remember that. I was very small for American wrestlers. The American wrestlers is different now. Now my size is the right size for American wrestling. But in those early days, they liked the big guys. They liked the great big steamers, you know, Andre the Giant and all those guys. So when I got into the dressing room, there was all the good guys over there, and there was all the bad guys over this side. And I was in with the bad guys. I knew a couple of the guys from being on the road, you know. I know a couple of guys that have been in Japan, a couple of guys that have been in England, I've been from another place I've been in, these guys. And there was Hogan there, who was a good friend of mine, and he came across to see me and all the rest of it. But some of the guys in the dressing room didn't know who I was, and I heard a few whispers, who's this little guy? Who's this little guy? Who's this little guy? And I went and introduced myself in this dressing room, you know. And there's a lot of the people on the other side knew me, but the people in my dressing room, just on the wall, this your dressing room, didn't know me. A couple of guys didn't know me. And they were sort of, hi, yeah, how you doing? You know, okay, you like me, you know, what's going on? Real different breed, that American hardcore, old, firm wrestlers. You know, so I came in a little suit with a tie on, they've all got cowboy hats and big boots and, you know, big things hanging down from here, all furry stuff hanging down from here, you know, and talking, chewing gum and spitting, you know, all those guys, you know, Harley Race and those guys. Different breed. So they're all over there, and I'm there in my little grey suit and tie, and hook it up on the pegs and get my black tie kit on, and they all start laughing and thinking, what's going on with this guy? You know, anyway. I went in and had an incredible match. And when I went in, nobody knew me. When I came out, everyone wanted to shake my hand. Everyone wanted to shake my hand and wanted to know me. Amazing. And that's how that business is, you know, that's how the business is.